Hello and welcome everybody. My name is the IT guy, and in this video we're going to do the first step in installing a full LAMP stack server. So LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL or PHP, and MySQL can also be MariaDB or anything else that starts with an M, but it's just the M is for MySQL in this case because we're going to use MySQL, but the M stands for the SQL software. So the database software on the server. But the first thing we need, of course, is an operating system. We need to install all this software on an operating system, and the software we're going to use, the operating system we're going to use is, of course, Linux. And to be more specific, we're going to use Ubuntu. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Ubuntu website, ubuntu.com, and go over to download. And then you're going to choose Ubuntu Server 19.04 LTS, which is, as of today, the latest version. So we're just going to wait a couple of seconds here to download the ISO. Okay, so the Ubuntu ISO has downloaded. Do take note, of course, if you're running something like a VPS, then you don't need to install Linux. But we're going to install Linux. I just want to show you the complete step, and this would actually be a sort of how-to video if you want to use this for testing purposes or anything like that. I don't think that the way I'm going to show it is actually how you're going to use it in a production environment, because in a production environment you're probably going to use, if you want to use a LAMP stack, you're probably going to have some sort of VPS already set up by your provider. In that case, you need to make sure that VPS is properly set up first, and after that you can follow all the steps, and you can just skip this video, but just to be sure, if you want to know how to install Linux server, this is the way to do it. So of course we downloaded the ISO. Let's open up VirtualBox because we're going to use VirtualBox to create this machine. So let's go ahead and create a new machine. Let's call this LAMP stack, and the type will be Linux, and we're going to choose Ubuntu 64-bit and choose next. The memory size, 1 gig actually suffices because we're not going to use any fancy GUIs. This is all pure terminal, and as you might know, Linux is a very, very lightweight system, especially if you don't use the desktop environment, so we're not going to use that. We're just going to use a little bit of memory to assign the web server. So actually, if you're really going to use, if you're going to run a larger website, if you're going to use a website that really uses all sorts of PHP functions or even a WordPress server on this, then I suggest you increase the size to about 2 gigs. That should be more than enough. Let's create a new virtual disk. 10 gigs will be enough. We're not going to use any big files on this server. The VDI format is also good. Let's dynamically allocate it, and let's create our virtual machine. Okay, so this is our LAMP stack. Let's go into settings. Let's go into storage, and then let's select this over here, the little disk icon here, and let's choose a virtual optical disk file. And let's go into my downloads here. And here's our Ubuntu live server. Let's go into network first, and let's attach it to bridged adapter because we're going to be accessing this machine from our host machine as well. So we want to make sure that the network is set to bridged adapter so that we can actually connect to this machine from another machine within the network. If you're going to put it to NAT, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So it's easier if you just use bridged adapter. So let's go ahead and click bridged adapter and hit OK. Let's start the machine. Okay, so here's the installation menu. So we're going to use English as our preferred language. This is all good. And right over here, you can see that we already got a IP address, but we want to use a fixed IP address in this case. So let's edit the IPv4 address here, and let's set it to manual. So the subnet can be, actually, if you go into command prompt and you type in ipconfig in Windows, you'll end up with all this information. So let's use that information to fill in the blanks here. So the subnet can be oops. So the subnet can be, in this case, it is 192. I think my numblock is disabled here. Okay, 192.168.0.0/24. And whenever you're working in a 192.168 range, you're going to be using the /24 over here. I'm not going to go into too much detail on what this is because most of the routers actually most of the routers in the home segment and retail. So for people using this at home, you will have to use the /24 address subnet. I mean, then the address can be 192.168.0. And this is actually something you'll see over here. So the IP address is 192.168.0.231 in this case, and this can be whatever you want, starting from 2 to 254. Just make sure that you choose something within a specific range, and make sure that you're not using this IP address itself or any of the IP addresses that are already being used in the network. And you can do this on any device. So if you go over to the device that you want to check if the IP address already exists, you can do the same thing. You can go over to the command prompt, you can type in ipconfig, and with ipconfig you'll see the IP address, and whatever IP address that is stated after this cannot be used over here. So in my case, I'm going to use something like 245. I know that this one is not being used in my network, so I know that I can use this. So the gateway can be the same as here. So default gateway over here is 192.168.0.1, and the name servers are the DNS servers. So over here, if we type in ipconfig/all, it will also show us the DNS servers. So over here, we'll see that the DNS servers are 195.1. This is actually my my ISP's DNS server, but you can choose actually also the same as your router. So this can also be the DNS, because the router will forward its DNS signals to the internet. You can comma separate them, and let's say we want to use the Google one, which is 8.8.8.8, and domains, you can leave that blank. So as you can see, it accepted our network settings. Let's hit done. Let's skip the proxy address. We don't need the proxy address. The mirror address can remain the same as well. Let's hit done, and then use the entire disk and choose the disk we just created. And this is just to check if everything is good. This all looks very good. Let's go ahead and hit done. And this is just another confirmation that all your data will be destroyed. Let's hit continue because the disk is empty. Doesn't really matter for us. Let's hit continue, and over here we can fill in our name. So I'm gonna fill in just IT guy, and your server's name is IT guy. Oops, IT guy lamp stack, something like that. Pick a username, IT guy. Again, let's use a password. This is just for testing purposes. And of course, we want to hit space to install the Open SSH server. Very important, because we're going to use SSH for this server quite often. This is actually a lot easier to use an Open SSH server to configure the server from anywhere. So you definitely want to install the Open SSH server. Let's hit done. And over here you can choose a couple of things, and things like Docker can be installed, even PowerShell. There's a lot of stuff that you can install, but we're not going to install anything because we don't really need anything of that. So just hit done, and then just wait for everything to be installed. And once the installation is done, we're going to see if everything worked out the way it should have. So now everything is done. As you can see, it also downloaded and installed security updates. We can reboot the system now. and remove the installation medium. By default, this should happen automatically. So if we go into devices, optical drives, you'll see that the device has already been removed automatically by VirtualBox. So now just wait until the system boots. Okay, so now we can log in using our oops. Okay, so it's like it still had some work to do. Okay, so now we can log in using our username and our password. And there we have it. So the first thing we of course want to do is do a sudo apt update to make sure that all the packages are up to date before we start installing anything. So 14 packages can be upgraded. So let's do sudo apt upgrade and hit yes, and then just wait for the update to finish. So now the update is done. Let's do one more thing, and this is not a necessity, but it's just good to have the practice built in automatically so you always enable the firewall. So let's do UFW status. Of course, we need to do sudo UFW status. So the status is inactive. So now we know that the firewall is inactive. So let's do sudo UFW list app. Excuse me, it's app list. So we now know that the available applications over here are OpenSSH. This is the only application that's installed. So we want to make sure that we can access the server using OpenSSH. So we first need to enable OpenSSH. So let's go ahead and sudo allow OpenSSH. Of course, we need to sudo UFW allow OpenSSH. There we go. So the rules have been updated right now, and let's do a sudo UFW enable. And now let's do a sudo UFW status. And we can see that OpenSSH is allowed and the status is actually active. So the firewall is active and OpenSSH is allowed, and you can access it from anywhere. So this is the first video. In the next video, I'll be covering how to install Apache and configuring Apache, and also, allowing the firewall rules to allow the Apache server, and after that we'll do all the rest. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it, guys, and if you did, please leave a like and a comment below, and if you want to see more of my videos, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.